I got to play the brand new solo leveling game early. Now, recently I got put onto solo leveling, and I had remembered even before that there was an action RPG of this IP coming, and I was very interested in checking it out just because of the type of game that it was. This video was sponsored, and thank you to Netmarble for sponsoring today's video, but I would have ended up checking this game out regardless if whether this was sponsored or not, so this is something I was ultimately going to play anyway, so I'm really lucky to have gotten my hands on it early, and I wanted to give you guys some opinions about what I think about the gameplay and whether it's right for you. Alright, firstly, Solo Leveling Arise Overdrive is an action RPG game that's based off the original IP that is the Solo Leveling anime, which just had its second season end very recently, but this game does follow the storyline of the anime, so you can experience it through a completely different lens and actually be part of it and participate in it, and there's also some additional story content that's not found in the anime that will be found within this game. It does have a fully fledged single-player mode in which you can experience the story, but there also are some cooperative features as well, which we'll talk a little bit about later. As I mentioned, this is a heavy combat-focused RPG game with a fair amount of extremely deep progression. I was really surprised when I started playing, and with what I had limited access to, I could already tell the depth at which the customization features are integrated into this game really well. So, for example, when you start playing, Jinwoo gets basically 4 different classes you can pick from, and these are sort of just like other archetypes that you'll notice in RPGs. You have like your assassin, your elementalist, your duelist, and your ruler, and these all have different stat spreads, which means that different weapons will be more or less effective just depending on where your stat build is. And that's all pretty standard RPG stuff, right? You have your typical melee character and your mage and things like that, but what's really cool about this game is that you actually get the ability to change your class essentially whenever you want to. You can swap from an elementalist and that mage playstyle over to like an assassin and be really aggressive and up close and stuff. So it's interesting to play with different playstyles on the same character. Now, you don't always play as Jinwoo, and this is where it gets kind of cool because you get to play with a handful of different hunters in the roster. Now, I didn't have access to all of them, but there are a handful here, and there's enough variety already to keep me busy with the amount of content that I did have access to. You can try different team compositions because there are some dungeons that Jinwoo cannot enter and that you need other hunters to go after. So these kind of require their own mastery, and you can customize these characters as well, put in different team formations, different modifiers to make your experience different, and some dungeons are so specific and tough that they really demand that you build the perfect team comp. I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of depth and customization and progression all of these systems have. It's a lot more complicated than you probably think, and it's something that you can sink hours into, really perfecting and optimizing your build. And what's even cooler is that, aside from the main story missions that you can go after, you do have this mode called this Battlefield of Time, which is basically like a time attack to see how quickly you can kill the enemies in this room and then face a major boss at the end. This puts not only your mechanical skill to the test because the combat is excellent here, but it also allows you to just see objectively how good your build is and how you can further optimize it to take it into more challenging combat, or you can just try to beat your friends in the time attack mode and have the quickest possible time. Either way, let's talk about combat because this is the thing that I was interested in initially when this game got announced. As you can probably tell by the gameplay, the combat itself is extremely flashy, yet it's also quite complex in the way that it works as well. It's one of those action RPGs that really focus on comboing, it focuses on chaining moves together, and what's even more fun is that you can chain moves together with other members of your party, so not all of your combos are going to be the same match to match. In fact, probably every game they're going to be different because of your team comp. Now, not only do you have a ton of offensive capabilities, but the defensive ones are just as interesting because you have this mechanic called extreme evasion, which is basically when you dodge perfectly as a move comes out, and you can see it right here, but you also have the ability to parry. So these two in combination can allow you to absolutely nuke bosses. It takes a second to get the hang of, but once you get repeat playthroughs on bosses, you learn their moveset, you learn their dodge timings, you learn their parry timings, and you learn how to combo that with your best offensive moves as well, and even adding like elemental damage can just absolutely annihilate health bars. So it's a lot of fun, especially playing around with different team compositions and seeing what annihilates bosses the fastest. When you're playing the game, you'll start in the Hunter's lobby, but you'll get access to the world map eventually after talking to some of the characters. They'll explain how things go, but basically you jump into this world map and you take on different missions and dungeons. And like I said, depending on which dungeon or what type of mission it is, some are basically really optimized for co-op, and you can play with other people during these and try to make like the best party composition, or you can play all of this solo as well and just use either Jinwoo's team or the Hunter's team. However, as you chew through these missions in the world map, what's interesting is that you can fine-tune the difficulty of these to either get better rewards or just challenge yourself a little bit more and to put your build to the test. Not only that, but this game does something really cool that I think more games should start looking into, is that they have bosses that evolve with you and that grow ever more powerful to present more challenges. So a boss in a certain form that you may have defeated with no problem, as it evolves and grows more powerful, may present a real challenge and force you to either create a more optimized build or just get better at combat. This kind of stuff is what I absolutely love in these kind of action RPGs, and the combat alone was enough to keep me entertained for hours. Even though I didn't have access to the full game, I just kept going back to play what I did have access to, trying these levels over and over again to try to get a better score. That's how I know a game is good, when it gives me like very challenging boss fights and makes me want to get better at the combat systems, because again, it may take you a second to pick up, but once you get the flow of it and you understand the feel, and then you get better with the character experience, because they all play very different. There's characters that are significantly more passive and magic based. There's some that really need to be right up close to the enemy. So it's all about like kind of how you like to play and also the enemy you're facing and maybe what they're weak to. I think the single player content, when the full game releases, gives you more than enough to chew on and will keep you busy and entertained for a very long time. But I think the real icing on the cake for me is that there are 4-player raids. So this means that you have these big co-op missions that you can play with 4 different players, and you can take on dungeons, boss battles, and just really difficult and challenging encounters, strategic boss battles, and so on. And I think that's really probably where the best content of this game is going to be found, the best rewards, and the most entertainment, because these are going to be absolutely insane. This takes the build crafting and making the perfect team composition that's already interesting in the solo single player experience, but making it even more interesting playing with your buddies in co-op. 4-player PvE co-op mode is literally right up my alley, and that's all I needed to hear to be sold on a game like this, so that is music to my ears. As I said, I didn't have access to nearly all of the characters. There's going to be 20 plus hunters when the full game comes out. And then that on top of all the skill trees and customization options you have with Jinwoo should give you a lot to chew on, and it feels really good to make progress in this game. That's one of the best features about it. As I mentioned, even if this wasn't sponsored, this is a game I was most likely going to check out anyways, because it has a very good console and PC oriented experience. I mean, if you play on a controller specifically, I can't really speak to mouse and keyboard, but controller felt excellent on here, and it's a game that just has an overall good sense of mechanics. But I think between the flashy combat, the extra storyline stuff you get, and just being able to experience solo leveling from the perspective of participating in it should be enough for not only fans of the anime, but even people that just like playing action RPGs. This is a very high quality one. If you want to check out the game right now for your preferred platform, you can use the link in the description down below to go and check out the game right now. Thank you again so much, Netmarble, for sponsoring this video. I was really happy to check this out, and I think you guys should too. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.